Welcome to the first Shanti Sena video conference of 2024. We are very glad that you're here. As you just heard, we are recording this video conference. So if you do not want your image to appear, you can feel free to turn off your camera. And if you have any questions or you want to respond to something, a question by the facilitator or one of the speakers, you can just click the reactions button on the bottom of your screen and then raise your hand. And that's a great way. That way your image floats to the top and it makes it easier for me to be able to make sure I'm not missing anyone. So I would appreciate that help with that. We today are going to be talking about the UCPA International Gathering, which occurred in, well, we've been saying it occurred in Geneva, but technically we were in Ferney, France most of the time. But we were in Geneva for part of the program. And Ferney is just like a hop, skip, and a jump from Geneva. It's kind of a suburb. It just happens to be in another country. I'm going to start us with a quick presentation on just what was contained in the conference. So that gives you a base for which to ask your questions. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And try and do that. Okay, this is the report back to the Shanti Sena Network. And I want to start by letting you know who attended the gathering. We had 84 participants. We actually had a limit of 80 participants from the hotel, but we squeezed a few more in because we just wanted more people to come. It was quite a diverse and inclusive group. We had people from 31 countries on 6 continents, representing 37 organizations. So that was really exciting. And as you can see, it was spread around the world. So one of the goals that the organizers had for the conference was to get representation from as many organizations and as many areas as possible. I think they did a good job. All right. Hold it. There we go. On the first day of the gathering, we started with spending the morning getting to know each other. The facilitators did a great job of giving us some exercises to help us think about how we are connected. And even though we don't know each other, how we are in a shared community. Then we spent the afternoon learning about engaging community voices. And we had to choose. So these 3 topics, engaging community voices, decolonizing, and learning what works, have been working groups. 3 working groups have been working for almost 2 years to think as deeply as possible about those topics. And then each of the groups brought a workshop to the gathering in Geneva. We ended that first evening with an idea place. People brought books and information about their organizations, and it was a lively event. Okay. On the second day, we took some time and shared content because, of course, you wanted to go to all 3 of the workshops, right? And so you could only go to one. And so this was your chance to learn a little bit about what happened in the other 2 workshops. And then we had a plenary session where speakers talked about the looming threats, how we have the opportunity to shape challenges into strategies. The threats that the plenary speakers focused on were climate change and digital security. In the afternoon of the second day, we had an opportunity to attend one of 4 workshops. One was about advancing structural transformation, or the connection between UCP and nonviolence and how interrelated they are. The other was talking about mental health in the context of sociopolitical violence, recognizing that it can be very hard to have your workplace be the site of social political violence. We learned about some peace teams around the world from Burundi and South Sudan, and then the role of UCPA in contemporary peace processes, focused on the emerging UCPA groups in the Latin American area. We also shared the content from those workshops. And then the second evening was a craft fair and a cultural open mic. There was singing and dancing and karaoke. It was a blast. On the third day, we spent the morning talking about the community of practice. What does the community of practice need to thrive and grow? Then we took buses into Geneva and we went to a policy roundtable. It was hosted by the permanent missions of the Netherlands, Costa Rica, Sierra Leone, and the Philippines, and of course, hosted by the Nonviolent Peace Force. There we heard stories from the South Sudan and around the world, really. And we also got a great presentation from a set of researchers who were attending the meeting, who gave quite compelling documentation that UCP does work. We finished the event with a celebratory dinner, and we also took some time to wish Mel well as he moved into retirement. So we had several learnings from the, what we all kind of took away from the gathering. One was that our community of practice really does add value. We can tell from what people said, the feedback they gave us, the things they put on their posters, that the value for the participants was the fact that the community of practice can collaboratively create things which we can all share and use, that we can share training, that we can support each other in our efforts, and that we get a lot of inspiration from each other. We also learned that UCPA works. Here is just one example of a slide from one of the groups that is doing statistical research to try and show and demonstrate and illustrate that UCPA works. And as you can see, here is a dramatic slide from Cure Violence regarding their work in Honduras. And of course, we also learned at the gathering that we're not done. There are opportunities to expand and enhance the community practice. We ended up with, I'm not quite sure yet, the potential for 5 working groups to move on and continue to meet and produce after the gathering. I know that one group is working on formalizing the structure of the international community of practice. What does it mean to be a member? How is it going to work, et cetera. One group is working on improving communication, things like the global listserv, building a website for the community of practice, probably hosting video conferences such as this, but for the global community. We're also looking at ways to enable organizational exchanges, share resources, and share training. If you're interested in contributing to any of these ongoing groups, here are the names and the contact information, and this presentation will be attached to your follow-up email. And you can, if you want to look those up. Also attached to your follow-up email is going to be the Gathering Resources Guide. This is just a snippet of it. It allows you to, using the links embedded in the guide, to access almost more than 45 resources. that were generated and shared at the UCPA International Gathering. So you can see the agenda, the list of people that came, pictures from the gathering, plus all of the speaker notes and presentations, et cetera, are all included in the resources guide. So that's the introduction to give you the base for those of you who could not be there. So we're going to go ahead and move into our panel discussion. First of all, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Eliane is a peace activist and consultant on gender responsive policies with a background in peace and security and ecological justice. She's a member of the DC Peace Team and has trained thousands of people from all backgrounds and walks of life in the US and globally in nonviolent skills. Let me let someone in here, including activists, community and religious leaders, elected officials, students, educators, of broad spectrum of people. Violence around the world keeps her up at night. I think that's true for many of us. And the recent UCPA gathering provided her with both a glimmer of hope and a summon to do more. Eliane, wave your hand. That's Eliane. Mary Hannah has been working for the Meta Peace Team as the operations manager and trainings coordinator for nearly 19 years. She's participated in innumerable peace teams, both domestic, meaning within the United States, and international. The work and philosophy of UCPA is her passion, and she's extremely grateful for having been given the opportunity to have participated in the historic gathering in Geneva. Mel, probably most of us know. Oh, here, Mary, wave your hand. There you are. Okay. Mel, I think most people know Mel, but he has been helping to organize the UCPA community of practice since 2015. It's been a long project. At the end of October, he retired from the Nonviolent Peace Force, and he's currently writing a spiritual memoir and helping to build resistance to the U.S. support of the Israel genocide in Palestine. He plans to continue his support of the community of practice. Lucky for us. Okay, so we have some questions that we've prepared for the panelists, and then we're going to give you, the participants, lots of time to ask your own questions after we do the prepared questions. So I am going to start, and I am going to start with Mary. Mary, what is your favorite story from the gathering?
And now unmuted myself. I struggled with one. The other ones, I had a very clear idea of what my answer wanted to be. But this one was a little tricky for me because there's so many different small stories that compiled into making this experience so powerful. And much of it had to do with the content, but I'm going to say probably the majority had to do with being with each other and the experience that lent itself to. But I think my favorite story was I had shared in a conversation, and it sort of snowballed, that MPT, Meta Peace Team, when we do our trainings, we always bookend them with on one end, everything starts with centering and the importance of centering and what that brings to the work that we do. And the other end of our trainings, the other end of that bookshelf, so to speak, is self-care. And that if we're not doing good self-care, we can't keep doing the work, and that you can't pour from an empty cup. And what I loved about sharing that was that there was a ripple effect that was easy for me to see. So I'm I'm hoping that like other people had the same experience, that there were ripple effects that you could see and how powerful that is. But I found that it came up in another instance where in another workshop where somebody brought it forward, and so like somebody else thought it was a good idea and they brought it up, and I thought how exciting that when we feel like we have something that can make this collaborative work that we're doing even better, even more powerful, um, that it's taking off in the best way of being viral. So uh, that was my favorite story of being there, of knowing that not just in my instance where people picked up this technique that we use, but that I was able to extrapolate that to know that this was happening in all different kinds of instances, and how exciting that would all these people from all these different continents from all over the world were having that same experience, and how rich that made this whole thing.
Thank you, Mary. Mel, I think I'll make you next. Unmute.
You know, would you ask Eliane to go next? Because I have a story I want to tell, but I want to make sure that I don't take her story.
Okay. All right, Eliane, you ready?
Sure, I can go. First of all, I'm so grateful to be here with you all and to share this space with so many wonderful people. I'm gonna echo Mariana in the sense that for me, every single interaction, whether it was before or during the gathering, and then whether it was one-on-one or in group settings, translated into a beautiful story for me. And one particular story that deeply resonated with me was related to the organizer commitment to engage community voices and commitment for inclusion and representation. And I can really appreciate that being a woman of color. So some of you might know that there were tension in Guatemala on the day leading to the gathering. And there were road closure due to that tension. This was political tension. So that was making it almost impossible to travel. And one of our speakers, an amazing woman from Guatemala, really, really wanted to be there, but those tensions were going to be on the way. And she really wanted to be there because she was bringing to the gathering a very unique perspective from her community. So I was communicating with her back and forth, and there seems to be no hope. And we just thought that we needed a miracle. So fast forward, I traveled to Geneva, and as I arrive at the airport, she's right there, standing in front of me. And I thought this was a miracle. This was really a miracle. So it was nothing short of a miracle. So I asked her what happened, and she just, I mean, I still get very emotional and get goosebumps when I say the story. But she shared with me that the organizers, and I want to give credit to Mel here and Heidi, were able to dispatch an helicopter to allow her to join us and to represent her community. Just think about that. Just think about that. I share this story because on one hand, it really shed light on the experience and the perseverance of local actors who have to make sacrifice to contribute to this work. And sometimes that sacrifice even involve taking risk. That was a risk for her to come, and she really wanted to be there. And on the other hand, I think the story beautifully illustrates the meaning of doing our part to guarantee the primacy of local actors and to ensure that they are included at every level. And as I think about that, the imagery of the helicopter, in the case that I mentioned, in this case, I think that will forever remain in my mind. And I think that will serve for me as a symbol of how we can bridge the gap in representation and in accessibility not only within the broader scope of peace building, but specifically in the context of unarmed civilian protection. So for me, that was an amazing story, and that was a unique story, and I'm super grateful to have witnessed that story. Thanks.
Thanks, Celian. Okay, Mel.
Oh, well, there were so many stories. It was exciting to me to see people gathering, first of all, because by that time I knew who almost everyone was because of working on visas and working on plane tickets and a lot of details leading up to the event. But one of the stories that I'd like to share was the story that came out during the policy roundtable when Tanya from Nonviolent Peace Force in Ukraine was talking about our work there and our work in Kherson, which is right on the front. And she talked about having to adapt unarmed civilian protection in a new context. Tanya has worked in Iraq and she's worked in the US and she's worked in Sudan, but she didn't know about how we could do UCP on the front in Ukraine where you can't negotiate with one of the combatants, or you can't connect with one of the combatants, and you can't negotiate with bombs and missiles and drones. And yet what she found was that the application of our work wasn't so different than it was in many other places. It starts out with relationships. It starts out with deep listening. She talked about connecting with a local fishing group because the day after the Russian invasion, local groups stepped up and started doing unarmed civilian protection. They didn't call it that, but they were doing the work, and they were doing it with precious little resources and huge amount of risk. And they were just out there doing it. And she told this story about people doing accompaniment, evacuating people out of rural places and their cars breaking down and running out of gas, and that being able to access money so that people could have fuel, could get their cars fixed, and that really a lot of our work came to focusing and supporting the local work that was being done. But it was important that we be on the front lines, and she talked about the front line being 850 kilometers long, and that to be there providing that solidarity, but not doing the work for people, but supporting them in the work and listening to what they wanted. They wanted first aid support. They wanted things like flak jackets and helmets. And I know some people within the UCP community didn't see that as nonviolent. But to me, I mean, I've hidden behind rocks before when I've been shot at, and I don't see that very different than wearing a helmet. And so we set up lending libraries in communities so that people can check out personal protective gear. But the story that she told was at the Kherson railway station, where our team and a local team were going every day because lots of people who were coming from the east were coming there. And so there was a lot of people there, a lot of civilians, a lot of children. And so our teams were there, and the station master was annoyed. And he kept saying, "What are you doing? And why are you here?" And so on and so forth. But the team kept coming every day and spending time there and being present. And then one morning, the station received a direct hit. And our team was there to help support people and to get them away and get them away from the destruction that had happened. And fortunately, none of the people were hurt. And afterwards, as Tanya said, everything's been tea and hugs with the station master. And so it's a story about relationship building, no matter where we are.
Wonderful. Great. Thanks, Mel. Okay. Let's talk about what you learned at the gathering. I'll have to start with someone different. I'm going to start with you, Ilian. Do you have something you learned that you took away from the gathering that you want to share with the group?
One major and one key takeaway for me is that we are facing new challenges and new threats that were perhaps either non-existent or maybe less prominent during the inception of UCP, and that we need to be more sensitive to this evolving dynamic and more creative in our response. And among those challenges, I'm thinking about us grappling now with digital threats and ecological violence, both of which demand our attention and a little more innovation. If you look at the data, you will know that in 2022 alone, at least 177 environmental land defenders were killed because they were defending their land. Those were threats that we didn't have to tackle a lot in the past, and those are existing threats and continue to emerge. And as we do UCP, what does that mean, right? We need to rethink the way we do UCP to be able to better serve those communities, to be able to respond to those emergency threats in a way that is more effective. So that's one key takeaway for me, is that things are changing and we need to be able to adapt to these changes.
Thanks, Ilian. Okay, Mel, you're next. One important learning you took away from the gathering.
You know, since we began NP, we've talked about scaling up and how do we build unarmed civilian protection so that it can be larger and larger and be able to contend. And I see some of my brothers and sisters on this phone call who have worked very hard on that issue. And certainly NP has grown, but not to the scale that we had wanted it to grow when we started. One of the things, though, that I learned is that UCP and accompaniment is growing, but it's growing laterally. And that now we know of that there's at least 61 organizations throughout the world that are doing unarmed civilian protection or accompaniment in some form in 24 countries. And that number continues to grow. And that's only the number that we know about. And so part of our work with the community of practice is to spread this concept and as many resources as we can to as many people who are interested. I always tell people, if they're involved with the community of practice, don't share anything that you don't want shared with the world, because we want to make this as broadly available to anybody that wants to do this work. And so that the scaling up will really be more about scaling out.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, Mary, what about you? One important learning you took away from the gathering?
Well, one, I think that was really an insight at a much deeper level for me. And I know that this is, I'm going to be parroting things that I know I've heard you say, Mel, is that relationships are the key to everything. And I think I knew that. I mean, I know I've said it, but I think what the conference really made tangible was that we were spending so much time with each other, including, believe it or not, at meals. Now, those of us in the United States, and I might venture Canada, but Madeline, you'll have to comment on that. Like, we're used to, like, okay, I have to take lunch break, and I'm going to eat my food as fast as possible so I can get back to the real work. And we had like what 2 hours for lunch and to sit and to talk, and there was no rush, and it was so, no pun intended, foreign to me. And because we took that time to talk with each other and share stories about grandchildren or pets or favorite vacation trips or things that we were struggling with in our own communities, the barriers that you might normally have been concerned about, whether it was nationality or gender or language, they all fell away. And so spending that much time with each other, and being with each other, took away the masks that I think we assign to people that we don't know. And so the important thing for me kept coming back to that the work is really important, and the research is important, the techniques are important, and sharing strategies is really important. But all of those things will come to fruition as we build relationships with each other. And there were people from every corner of the world there, and it was such a beautiful thing that it really made you see that when you make people real and their lives real, and you engage with each other in a really personal way, that everything else can be accomplished.
Great. All right. One more question here. We know that the community practice is going to continue to grow and evolve. We saw in the presentation that there are sort of 5 things that are happening: sharing training, doing organizational exchanges, sharing resources, formalizing the structure, and working on internal communications. So of those sort of next steps kinds of things, what initiative are you the most excited about and why? And I think I will start with you this time, Mel.
I'm most excited about our potential to collaborate with each other. And this doesn't directly answer your question, Adele. And to look for opportunities. We had 5 groups who were there who have been directly involved in Palestine, and to look at where are the opportunities for collaboration and the opportunities that might evolve for us to perhaps first get into the West Bank and then perhaps go from there, and that the connections for collaboration and communication and joint training and things like that were laid at this conference, and certainly were set. Most of the people landed on October 7th and October 8th and came in hope and were greeted by horror, including our keynote, our opening speaker lives in the West Bank. And so she opened up with some true reality of what was going on, and that there are those potentialities that we now have much greater potential to reach because of the connections that were built.
Thanks, Mel. Okay, Mary, you're next. What next steps are you most excited about? You're muted.
I did click on it. I just didn't apparently click hard enough. For me, I've always had, I guess, the predisposition for the skills that we can share. And so the next step that I'm really excited about, not surprisingly, is training, but with a real emphasis on collaboration, on sharing different approaches, on nuance, which is so important. What works in one place or with one person doesn't work with another. So there's not necessarily a right way or a wrong way. You know, Maslow, we talk about in our trainings that Maslow has that phrase of, if there's, you know, if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail. And in our trainings, we talk about, like, we need to have more tools in that toolbox. And it's only through the collaboration and dialogue with each other that we can put more and more and more tools in there, so that if one thing doesn't work, we can try another. And if another thing doesn't work, there's a next thing to grab. And I think sort of in conjunction with the important learning that I got out of this was that, you know, we have talked about what's the most important skill, you know, and a lot of times I think Clara, for those of you who are familiar with it, is the one skill that we want everyone to walk away with. But we have started to, like, rephrase that and reshape that in such a way so that if we're talking about relationship building and we're talking about skill building and we're talking about what works best, the most important thing is to listen. And so I want to be part of listening and what works, and why does it work, and how does it work, and how can I adapt that to my culture or the people that I'm working with, and recognize there's not right or wrong or priority. There's just what works best in any given situation based on what you need, and allowing all of us to have those kinds of tools and spreading that kind of curriculum and idea wealth is really exciting. So
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. What do you think, Ileana? What's exciting you about the next?
For me, it's just the idea of creating this platform for organizational exchanges. For the same reason that Mayhana so beautifully elaborated earlier, I think it just gave the opportunity to learn, to go with the understanding that UCP look different in different contexts, and what worked for us doesn't necessarily work for a community that is perhaps located right now in the in the global South. And so I'm really excited about that, because learning what works, what doesn't work are going to really help us to find new way, perhaps adapt our own strategies and policy to better meet the need of the community that we're so fortunate to partner with. And as a young person, I'm very, very excited about that, because I think it will give me the opportunity to learn from those who have paved the way for this work, and those who have been doing this work for a long, long time. And so that is what I'm excited about, and I'm excited about the next step.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, one last question, and then we'll open it up to the floor for your questions. Ileana, I'm going to start with you. How are you thinking differently about UCPA or the UCPA community of practice now that you're back from the gathering?
I think my way of seeing the community of practice really evolved during the gathering. And I think I now see it not just only as a platform for knowledge sharing. I see it more of an ecosystem for collaboration and growth. And that's because there is power in the diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of background, of the member of that community. And I want to emphasize on the word community here. And that really has deepened my understanding of what unarmed civilian protection is about. And it is not just a whole one size fit all. It is a lot of little particles that all come together as pieces of a bigger puzzle to make things work and to make change be more sustainable. And so I think I have come to really appreciate the value of that community as a face or a space that we continue to foster this kind of collaboration and interdisciplinary collaboration and learning. And also more importantly, collective action. Because what I noticed too at the gathering is that it was not just about knowledge sharing, it was not just about thinking about collaboration, it was about thinking about actually doing the work to move us forward, doing the work to end systemic violence, doing the work to end oppression, doing the work in terms of decolonization. So I saw a lot of action-driven responses coming from the community. And so I think that is how my perspective has changed as compared to before and after. And I'm very excited to be able to contribute to this continued evolution.
Thank you. What a beautiful answer. Let's see, Mary, what's your how are you thinking differently about UCPA since the gathering?
I have been doing this work for almost 20 years, and this was the first time in memory that I could tangibly see the silos that each of us may have been in really breaking down in so notable a way that it felt like there was true global collaboration coming to a kind of fruition, and that working together with each other and holding fast to our common ground, sharing ideas, it had me feel that the true force that this work can be on an international scale, and will have. I'm not even going to say could have. I'm going to say will have on changing the world. And it reminded me of, for those of you who are familiar with Michael Negler's roadmap, if you're not, please look at it, but about how many different pieces it takes to make up this pie that is the world coming to justice and compassion and collaboration and equity. And so the thing that has me sort of joyous about coming out of this conference is that I can now see that the critical mass is going to happen. The point where there's enough of us. Mel talked about it being lateral, but I love that. And it fits with Michael's model that there will be a critical mass of people doing their little part so much, so deeply, and so interconnectedly that the paradigm shift is going to happen. And that's exciting.
Ooh, I'm getting chills. Very exciting. Michael, you have your hand up. You want to make a comment? You should unmute yourself.
Good point, Adele. A very quick comment, Mary. We have just decided that we're going to follow up on our film called The Third Harmony and do a second film, and it's going to be called Roadmap, the movie.
Nice, nice. Okay, Mel, you're our last panelist to answer this question. Well, how would you answer the question? How are you thinking differently about UCPA as a result of the gathering?
For me, it's about radical letting go. Since I returned from Geneva, and I've really struggled with some pretty deep depression, and certainly as seen what's been happening in Gaza and in the West Bank, and really struggling with, as a species, do we have it in us to turn around the mess that we're in? And then I look at the people that were there, and especially the young people and the young women who took leadership and who ran workshops. And then I think we're in good hands. And that in many ways we didn't hand it over, they took it. And that's the way it should be. And so with that, that this is going to happen, and that the paradigm shift will happen in ways that we didn't imagine, but it's not going to happen, that it is happening. And we see it, and then we have everything that we need, and it will take everything that we've got.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you so much. Okay, so now participants, it's your turn. What questions would you like to ask either a particular panelist or all of the panelists? And if you want to ask a question, please use the reactions button and raise your hand. Thank you, Naomi. I really appreciate you stepping out and doing that.
Thanks. Thanks everybody. This is my first interaction with UCPA, so it was lovely to hear all of your thoughts. And since I'm coming from the outside, I'd just like to affirm how hopeful and joyful and grateful your speech is, and talking about meeting with each other, but you're also kind of seeing some of the worst sides of humanity in what you're doing too. So, and the best sides. But my question would be, some of you already mentioned it, but like, where does your hope come from? What sustains that hope and drives you into the future in the face of also seeing what can go very, very badly with humanity too?
Okay, panelists, where does your hope come from? Who would like to start?
I
Thinking.
could start if you want to
Great.
tell.
Thank you, Mary.
Well, one sort of tangible thing that gave me hope was when I took a step back after being at this beautiful gathering and recognized the truly myriad different life experiences that people had there, where they grew up and how they were raised and what language they spoke. And, if you think about 80 plus people all having a meeting together, and you can't guarantee that they're going to speak the same language, or that they're using the same techniques, or that they have the same aims. And yet for everybody, we all came out feeling like it was a wealth of positive things to carry forward. That gives me hope that we are so much more alike and than we are different, and that the things that underlie what we want at the most base level, the ability to breathe and to have fresh water and a safe home and raise our children and good education, those are all the same. And sometimes we just need to remind other people, including ourselves, how much closer we are to each other than we often think.
Thanks, Mary. Mel, Ilian, anything to offer? Mel?
Last spring, I was in northern South Sudan, where we've worked for a decade. And I was at this place called Bentu, and with a couple of the women's protection teams who have been doing self-protection now very effectively for a number of years. And I hadn't been to Bentu since before the pandemic. And Bentu usually is a very, very dry place. And one of the things that we've done there over the years is to accompany women as they gather firewood, because they had been routinely attacked before then. And when we were with them, they weren't attacked. But when I was there last spring, they aren't collecting firewood anymore because that whole area is flooded and the floodwaters aren't receding. And this is a part of the ecological damage, ecological violence that's being done. They don't have cropland anymore. The World Food Program has cut off food to that area, not because the World Food Program are villains, but because many countries in the world are not keeping up with their pledges. And so the World Food Program doesn't have food. And these women are constantly dealing not only with the war in South Sudan, but now the war in Sudan and refugees coming from there. And I remember sitting down with them and listening to them talk about their work and their lives. And these are women I've known now for probably 7 years. And they were expressing excitement and hope. And as I listened to them, I thought, these women aren't fools. We were probably 500 meters from the floodwaters. These women had all experienced extreme violence in their lives. They knew grief in a way that I didn't. And yet they could hold hope and they could hold joy. And that level of maturity, to be able to hold hope and grief and joy, not to let one cancel out the other, I thought really showed me a way that I could survive. Because we can't deny, but they showed me it's possible to hold all three. And that's what gives me the ability to balance that.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you very much. Lilian, what gives you hope?
That's a question that's it's been really difficult to answer in light of what's happening in the world right now and what's happening since I can remember, as long as I can remember. But for me, I think what gives me hope are just the stories of changes. Yes, there were the tension, but there's also those stories that are not always highlighted. Stories of change, story of conversion. And what gives me hope is that if the work that we do can convert at least one person in my lifetime, then I think I made a difference. And that gives me hope. And I'm always looking to convert that one person in my life. So I think I want to leave it there. That's what gives me hope. That's what wake me up every day. And I'm trying to look for that one person that's gonna embrace nonviolence deeply and thoughtfully. And I know if that person get to that point, there are chances that that person is going to get another person. And that's all it takes to continue the chain.
Thank you, Lilian. Thank you very much. Okay, another question from the group. Who's got a question? Got three pretty interesting people up here. What do you think? Madeline?
I think there are other people here who also were at the event, and I wondered if any of them wanted to give us any of the biggest important message from their experience.
Well, I'm looking at the list. Madeline, I think I'm the only other person who was at the event.
You want to add what's keeping you going from all that work you put into it? My goodness.
Sure, what's keeping me going? Well, I guess it's my source of hope as well, which is I am fundamentally excited by the fact that people, even though they have hard jobs in conflict areas and they're all over the world, you know, when we did all that work and we brought all those people together, I wondered in my heart, would we really have the energy to carry this forward, right? To do things together, to do the organizational, administrative, and kind of, you know, back-breaking work of really building a community of practice. And what I've experienced so far since October is that the answer is yes. There are enough people who are willing to devote some part of each of their month, usually, you know, they're very often monthly meetings, to contribute to making sure that the community of practice has an infrastructure that it needs, has these important programs are in motion for people to benefit from. And I'm quite gratified that it feels like we're on a moving train. It is happening. And unarmed civilian protection isn't just something that I have to explain to everybody every time I talk about it anymore, you know, and it's starting to be talked about more and heard about more. And that's because of the work of the community practice. And I'm thrilled about it. Any other questions, or we will go to the next part of our agenda. Elliot, are you ready for the small groups? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to do in small groups is I'm going to break you into small groups. The coordinating committee for these video conferences is Elliot, me, Mary, and Madeline. And we work really hard to come up with interesting topics that people will take time out of their busy schedule to come and listen to. And our well is running a little dry. So we need your help, and we need you to sit in these small groups and come up with at least one idea for a topic for a video conference in the coming year, in 2024. And so we're going to give you about, I think we can go for 10 minutes if that doesn't screw you up, Elliot, or we can stick with 8. And we're going to ask you to go into small groups, talk about, if you get more than one idea, that's great. We'll take all ideas, but at least one idea. And then you're going to be asked to put that idea. And of course, you can think about panelists, and, you know, if you've got a topic and you have some ideas for a speaker or panelist or any, you know, people that could really help us get started on your idea, we'd really appreciate it. And then also we would need someone's name from your group who, if we had a question about it, we could call or email and talk to you to kind of dig in. So we're going to ask you to share your idea when we get back in the larger group, but also to put that information in the chat once we get back into the large group, so that we as the coordinating committee have it all, have it written down. And so then Mary has volunteered, thank you, Mary, to send out a survey monkey with all the ideas on a list, and you're going to be asked to vote. And so we'll use that as input into our process of trying to deliver great video conferences that are truly interesting to you. Okay. So, first of all, I think we can turn off the recording, Elliot. And you can send us into small groups, please. Okay, all right. Well, welcome back, everybody. How did your small groups go? Who's willing to share what happened in your small group?
Can go. I don't know who the other small group is.
That's okay. So who was in your small group, Mary?
I had Michael and Dancer and Naomi and Gloria.
Okay. All right. So what ideas did you guys come up with?
All right. So some of the ideas. How to get young people / children involved in learning some of these skills and ideas, whether that's in a school setting or some other kind of setting, but so that they start growing up with some of these skills and not waiting until they're adults to try and take them on as totally new things. Bystander intervention skills or upstanding intervention skills, however you want to do it, and how to integrate that. How to use people with social power to create dialogue and potential change, and how we could mobilize people like that to use their powers for good. So maybe sports stars, Michael mentioned like martial arts people at, and then that branched into Equimundo, coaching boys into men, taking apart toxic masculinity. We talked about digital safety and how those skills could be a benefit for both internal and international networks. When we're trying to strategize, that seems particularly important. And then maybe a workshop on anti-doxing and how to be safe, not only like how do you protect yourself from doxing, but then what can you do afterwards if it's a fait accompli?
What is doxing?
It comes from the word document, and it means people using your personal information, like your phone number or your license plate from your car or your address, to target you to a wider population of people. So, for example, if the Proud Boys want to dox you, they say, you know, we should go after so and so or this particular group, and revealing personal information that could be a threat to yourself or your family.
Well, thank you. Ellie's laughing at me.
No,
because I'm an old lady.
No, not everybody knew in our group what doxing was. So
Okay,
you're
well, that sounds like a lot of great ideas. I hope someone's putting them in the chat for us.
I will as soon as I can.
All right. And then how about the other group? What did you guys talk about? Who was in the other group? Mel? Who else? Was that you know, Madeline? Were you in the other group? So what you guys talk about?
Leon, would you like to go ahead and?
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
thought you were taking notes, so I thought you wanted to go. So one idea that came up in our group was a session on the intersection of UCP and ecological balance. So discussing the application of UCP for the protection of land defenders. That was one. We also talked about UCP and restorative justice, which is more UCP and restorative justice healing process for global warfare. And so just creating a platform for people to be able to process current ongoing conflicts around the world. So that was another idea, another topic that came up. I'm not sure if I forgot other topic, Madeline and Mel.
You gave us the name of the eco-justice organization too.
Oh, so yeah, I was just sharing that I started an organization that's not registered on the name of Eco Action Alliance, and the organization partner with Black, Indigenous, and women of color to address the most pressing ecological issue their community face disproportionately, and that's ranging from climate change to violence against women's land defenders, and using more nonviolent methods, and specifically unarmed civilian protections.
Great, great. All right, well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you.
We had
Oh, yes,
one other one, and that was how the Shanti Sena could collaborate on a project in Palestine.
Okay. Great. Okay. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Don't forget that you can communicate with all the Shanti Sena members through our listserv. You just have to put Shanti Sena at metacenter.org in the address line, and it goes to the 100 or so subscribers to the listserv. You know that the Shanti Sena network is open to all North Americans, that's Canada and the United States, interested in unarmed civilian protection and accompaniment work. So feel free to invite people. Yes, send that when you get the notices of the meetings, send their names forward. If people would like to join our listserv, which you can become a member of Shanti Sena by joining the listserv, you can just send they can send their name, their email, and their organizational affiliation, if any, to me at Adele_Lenig@outlook.com. And remember to respond to the Survey Monkey that is going to be in the follow-up email that Mary is going to send to prioritize all these great ideas so that we have a sense of which ones you are the most excited about of all the many great ideas that we heard tonight. Any further comments or questions? Okay, Elliot, we can stop recording. And I'd like to thank all of you for coming. It's great seeing you. And thank you for contributing to the